Hello, my name is Emiel Heijnen.
And I am Melissa Bremmer, and we're both Professor Arts Education at the Amsterdam University of the Arts. And in cooperation with Sanne Kersten, we have done the research into teacher as conceptual artist. Teachers in arts education might recognize the following situation. Socializing at a party, a guest might ask, "So, what do you do for a job?" This question about one's profession might seem easy to answer. However, teachers in arts education frequently struggle with what to answer about their professional identity, as they are pulled between two identities. Should they call themselves artist or performer, teacher, or possibly both? When arts teachers in a variety of disciplines are probed about this conflict, newly graduated arts teachers often answer that they believe that their main responsibility is education at the expense of understanding themselves as artists. More experienced arts teachers can answer that their teaching practice requires all their time and attention, and that their artist-performer identity simply fades away. Unwittingly, this conflict between identities can cause feelings of discontent, as teachers can start perceiving themselves as failed or uncommitted artists or performers. In this complex discussion about teacher and artist identities, Mexican-American artist and scholar Jorge Lucero questions the needless polar opposites of art and pedagogy. He examined the similarities between progressive pedagogy, such as Dewey, Freire, and Pinar, and conceptual art. The finding that both progressive pedagogy and conceptual art have the potential to be emancipatory, people-centered, and situational formed the basis for his idea of teacher as conceptual artist. In short, Lucero proposes that a teacher's practice in and out of the classroom can be their creative practice at the same time. Lucero found that conceptual art could give permissions to the field of teaching that provide teachers with modes of operating or ways of working that are similar to those of conceptual artists. He stresses that these modes are not an all-embracing set of rules. Rather, they can be considered as non-prescriptive strategies. And now we will discuss just a few of them. First of all, we'll discuss the mode school as material. Teachers can play with the materiality of a school and start to view it through the lens of conceptual art, and they can question its pedagogical views, rules, policies, and economic infrastructure, and wonder how these immaterial infrastructures can become an artwork, or how the actual surroundings of a school can become an artwork. The second mode we'll discuss is the mode accumulation. Many rituals and activities are repeated on a daily basis at school, and when documented over time, they can actually form a collection, an artwork. If you look at the artwork here, this is a series that started out as a happy accident when teacher Dale Irby discovered that he had coincidentally worn the same outfit in the yearbook photos of 73 and 74. Irby continued to wear the same shirt and V-neck on the school pictures over 4 decades, even when they barely fitted anymore. The accumulation of the pictures fascinates because it reveals slow changes over time, like the aging of the human face, the trends in eyewear fashion, and the subtle changes in the background picture. The third mode is co-construct. This mode entails the idea that to make art, teachers might need a partner to help them in the act of its co-construction, another pupil, object, a location, or a situation in school. In this picture, you see how pupils and the teacher co-constructed the zombie walk. The last mode we will discuss today is use closeness. The mode use closeness allows for the intimacy of relationships to be transformed into artworks. close relationships can be your family, friends, or neighbors. And these relationships hold the potential to bring out an artwork. This example is an artwork I made with my son Luca that combines closeness and accumulation. Now, in our research project, we wondered whether the idea of teacher as conceptual artist could narrow the gap between the teacher and the artist-performer identity of pre-service teachers. This is why we developed a project based on Lucero's ideas. The research questions in our research project were: which modes did students use to transform their classroom into a creative practice? And how did the project's Teacher as Conceptual Artist influence the students' perceptions concerning their professional identity? And our definition of identity is based on Langfeld's concept, who describes it as constructed in a social context, dynamic and shaped by action. This study was set out as a qualitative intervention study. Qualitative research methods can be used to explore the lived experience of participants concerning an educational intervention. The intervention was an elective project of 56 hours. During a weekend-long meeting with Jorge Lucero in Amsterdam, students were familiarized with this concept, Teacher as Conceptual Artist, through lectures on the different modes of operating as conceptual artists, discussions and workshops. Then, in the following 3 months, students implemented lessons based on Lucero's concepts in different schools in primary and secondary education, and they were supervised by Lucero through mail, Facebook and Skype. At the end of these 3 months, the artworks produced by the pupils in the schools were collectively exhibited in a professional art gallery in Amsterdam. Here you can see the interdisciplinary group of students. Mainly bachelor students took part. These students were from the theatre education, music education, visual arts education, and 1 master student participated. Research methods. A day prior to the project, we applied elicitation interviewing. Students chose 1 or 2 images out of 100 images that might visualize how they perceive their identity as an arts teacher. These images were without text and did not refer to art or teaching. The selection showed a mix of concrete and abstract images and a diversity of gender and people of cultural backgrounds. On the basis of the chosen images, the pre-service arts teachers wrote down the answers to the following questions. How do you describe your identity as arts teacher? And how do pupils currently see you? The chosen images and written answers functioned as a base measurement against which the development of the pre-service arts teacher's professional identity after the course could be measured. 3 weeks after the project, we did a semi-structured interview with the students. Students reflected on their images and written answers prior to the course. And they answered the questions: how do you describe your identity as arts teacher now? How do pupils see you now? And which of the modes appeal to you and were you able to apply in your classroom? Data analysis. The data were analyzed through a thematic analysis approach. This type of analysis can be used to identify and interpret themes across a corpus of data. Within the process of thematic coding, we started with deductive coding on the basis of these main themes: modes of operating as conceptual artist and professional identity. Every theme was first coded by 2 researchers separately, and afterwards they discussed the alignment of their interpretations to achieve interpretive convergence.
Findings. We asked the participants which modes of operating as conceptual artists they used in transforming their classroom into a creative practice. I will discuss the three modes that were most frequently mentioned in our study: school as material, use closeness, and co-construct. School as material was the mode that surfaced frequently in our data. Some students had taken this mode very literally, using the school's environment outside the classroom as artistic material in their courses. For instance, a music teacher student asked her pupils to collect sound samples from the school for a film score. Other students had taken a more conceptual approach towards this mode and used the school's institutional procedures and rules as material. Theatre student Johanna Bissewig developed an idea to hack the punishment system of a school. When pupils get a timeout due to misbehavior, they are usually sent out of the classroom and have to report themselves elsewhere in the school to write lines or receive another form of punishment. Johanna intervenes this timeout procedure that is very common in many Dutch schools. Pupils who are sent out of the class report themselves to Johanna, who invites them to make work during their timeout. This could truly be seen as an artwork that raises questions like, can or should art production serve as an alternative for shame and punishment? Co-construct was by far the most influential mode on the practices of the participants. Many of them explained that they had experimented with using a more democratic approach in the classroom, allowing different forms of mutual cooperation between pupils, like working in self-selected groups and finishing each other's work. Another form of co-constructing entailed that the works and conversations in class inspired the teacher's art, as illustrated in this quote. So the student says, I would find it very cool to just come up with a musical work with pupils from scratch. And the interviewer asks, would that work be part of your music oeuvre? Yes, but it would be just as much their oeuvre. We'll put our names next to each other, not under each other. The third mode that students found valuable was use closeness. Almost all students encountered their arts lessons as a space to research daily life experiences. Their arts assignments functioned as a form of intensified engagement with life. This approach aligns with the progressive pedagogy of Pinar. And students say, recognizing small details of life and exploring them as art, yes. And another student says, everything can be a work if you frame it right. That was really new to me. The project of participant Maarten Kolen illustrates closeness convincingly. His class self-initiated a collective project entitled This is Our Gang, that includes the production of masks, dances, pictures and films. Closeness in this example relates to the use of everyday popular culture as a source for art production. The online video game Fortnite was an important source for the pupils who integrated elements from the game with personal views, local influences and actualities. Only after Kolen saw their collected final works, he realized how serious his students had taken their project. Just for the sake of continuity in their photos and films, they had worn the same clothes to school for several weeks. Through inductive analysis, we found themes that could be interpreted as new modes for teaching as conceptual artists. For instance, journey over destination entails that students were challenged to use a process-oriented approach toward their curriculum and not to focus on a result too soon. Like in conceptual art, the documentation of a process could be a work of art too. Another new mode that we found is called cross-disciplinary borders, as students felt free to transcend their arts discipline. And the student says here, this is being an artist for me. I'm not only a musician, but I want to engage myself with different things too. Our findings include also aspects of identity formation. The data indicated that the perception of the students regarding their professional identity had slightly changed after the project. Some students discovered that they were able to integrate a teacher identity into an existing artist identity. A music teacher student observed that the project had made her sensitive to the fact that her expertise as a musician had common grounds with her expertise as a teacher. For example, both communicate and share musical information and thus could be integrated. This led her to conclude, "It is very valuable to remember that I am a teacher too, not just a musician." Other students found it easier to keep their artist identity alive in their teaching activities by taking the role of a fellow artist towards the student. Some visual art teachers students mentioned that due to the project, they had experienced that an artist identity could be lived within the school, not just beyond the classroom. These students were used to showing their art at the beginning of a lesson, but straight afterwards would take on the identity as a teacher and a supervisor. Through the project, students now noted that they found it easier to keep their artist identity alive in their teaching, especially through the mode of co-constructing. Some students intuitively felt they wanted to integrate their artist and teacher identity, but didn't know how to before the project. Discussing examples and working with strong role models like Jorge empowered them to come closer to this ideal. And the student says here, "Seeing other teachers like Lucero who have the same playful approach to teaching arts as myself strengthens my confidence that I can be a successful teacher too." So in conclusion, what we found is that the mode of co-constructing integrates their teacher and artist performer identity. It is an accessible mode for students to transform their classroom practice in a creative practice. Furthermore, students might have ideas about how to integrate their teacher and artist or performer identity, but do not know how that could look like in practice. A role model that materializes their ideal gives them confidence and to become a teacher and as a conceptual artist. Lastly, we found that the students transformed their teacher identity through enlarging teaching skills, more process-oriented, more interdisciplinary, and daring to take more freedom within the school system, like being critical toward the assessment system. In our studies, students seem to have a stronger image of themselves as teacher than as artist. The most quotes we found were about their teacher identity. Like this one, "I want my pupils to think for themselves. I want to offer them inspiration and points of departure for research and discovery, also for their personal growth. And I want to give them responsibility." This raises the question if we as teacher educators give the artist identity enough explicit attention. Should we not provide future arts educators with stronger and more varied professional models of practices in which teaching and art making are seen not as conflicting, but rather as reinforcing activities? Thank you very much. This is the end of our presentation.